This is Mencari, Australia. Breaking news.
This is a breaking news update from Mencari News. We're coming to you live from Sydney, where federal opposition leader Sussan Ley are holding a press conference following the shocking Bondi Massacre. We'll bring you official statements from the opposition leader as they address questions from the media and outline the next steps in the response. Stay tuned as we cover key developments from this unfolding situation.
Attack on the Jewish community and on all Australians is a day burned in the nation's soul. It was the darkest day since the Port Arthur massacre in April 1996. And Australians will remember where they were on the day of the Bondi massacre, and they will remember the feelings of overwhelming disbelief and shock that they felt. Those who saw the murderous massacre firsthand and lost loved ones will be changed forever. Children who were there to celebrate their faith and their community have learnt too young what it means to feel unsafe. Bondi Beach is a symbol of Australia. Its beautiful waters, its golden sands, its birthright for so many Australians for generations. This is a desecration against us all. These events will profoundly test and change our nation. I spoke to the Prime Minister last night and I offered the Coalition's assurance of support for state and federal agencies in the immediate aftermath of the massacre. And in that conversation, I sought an assurance from the Prime Minister that I would receive the necessary security briefings from our agencies and police, and I was told that would happen today. I want to acknowledge the swift and courageous response of the New South Wales Police and the paramedics, because it's their immediate action that steered people away from danger, that helped save lives, and that kept people feeling as safe as they possibly could in this horrific attack. I want to recognise those who stepped into danger to save lives, the everyday heroes. We don't yet know who they all are, but we have heard the stories, who did extraordinary things on the most extraordinary of days. Brave civilians, they are indeed heroes, because it's those acts of mateship and love that will always define us as Australians. I share the nation's revulsion and horror as we continue to hear testimonials from last night. But many Australians this morning are feeling a growing sense of bewilderment. And yes, there is anger. There is palpable anger, because antisemitism in Australia has been left to fester. Many of us who've been close to the Jewish Australians, as I have been for the last 2 years, have heard story after story of hideous antisemitism. We've seen a clear failure to keep Jewish Australians safe. We've seen a clear lack of leadership in keeping Jewish Australians safe. We have a government that sees anti-Semitism as a problem to be managed, not evil that needs to be eradicated. Everything must change from today in how governments respond. Criminal acts have been perpetrated and repeated publicly over the last 2 years. We've seen public landmarks turned into symbols of anti-Semitic hate. We've seen campuses occupied and Jewish students made to feel afraid. We've seen the homes of Jewish Australians vandalised, and we've seen Jewish childcare centres targeted. We've seen synagogues firebombed, orchestrated by foreign terrorist states. Every single day for the last 2 years, The lives of Jewish Australians have been made harder by this rising tide of anti-Semitism. Armed guards greeting 4-year-olds on their way into kindergarten. Mothers who've read something hateful online and decided, just today, I'm not going to send my child to school. University students having to put up with chants like, from the river to the sea. Let's be clear, this is a chant that calls for the explicit destruction of the Jewish state, and universities did not act appropriately. And Jewish Australians who've told me that they're returning to Israel because they feel safer there than they do here. Recently, I spoke with the Prime Minister's Special Envoy for Anti-Semitism, Gillian Siegel, and I touched base again with her this morning. And I remember that conversation from a few months ago, and the sense I had as I walked out of the room that it's not about if, but when this would happen. In February this year, ASIO Director Mike Burgess warned that anti-Semitism is the biggest threat to loss of life in Australia. Now, the Prime Minister has told Jewish Australians that he will do whatever it takes to deal with anti-Semitism. Now, he must start today by committing to implementing all of the recommendations in his anti-Semitism envoy, Gillian Siegel's report. We stand ready to support any meaningful action that the Albanese government can take to properly fund the security that Jewish Australians have been asking for at their schools, their places of worship and in their community. But it's about much more than security. If laws need to be passed, we should recall the Parliament and undertake to do exactly that. I stand with all Australians in this moment of shared grief, and I give this undertaking to the Australian people. We will do whatever it takes to force the strongest possible action from governments to keep Australians safe, to keep Jewish Australians safe, and to secure justice. Julian.
Sussan, thank you for your words. Sussan, thank you for your words and for your leadership, and Jono, also your leadership on these matters. I grew up around Bondi, and Bondi in the summer is a magical place. It's a magnet for people from all over the world. It's a place that young families go to. It's a place British tourists go to. It's a place of refuge. The Bondi of my childhood, you would hear the accents of people who'd come from the Holocaust, who'd survived the Holocaust to remake their lives in Australia, as far away from all that rubbish as possible. And to see the events that we saw last night in Bondi, which is a centre of Jewish communal life in this country, is tragedy. Last night, there were families much like my own who were celebrating the festival of Hanukkah. Hanukkah is a Jewish festival where we light candles to remember the miracle of oil that was only supposed to last one day but lasted 8 days. I want Australians who are not Jewish to think about the carols by candlelight that are in every suburban town, because that's what Hanukkah by the Sea was like. There were children on rides, there were people eating too much sugary food, there was dancing, there was music, there were prayers. It's the same as carols by candlelight. And yet it was interrupted by the murder of 16 innocent people, the injury of over 38 people. And there are families today who have awoken to have breakfast at their tables with empty chairs where just yesterday someone was sitting. There are people sitting by the beds of their loved ones in hospital in a critical condition. This isn't the country that I've grown up in, and it's not the country that Jewish Australians, or frankly any other Australian, should have to live in. I want to acknowledge the extraordinary first responders. I want to acknowledge the bravery of Australians who took matters into their own hands, and I want to acknowledge all the people from my electorate and from all around the country and indeed around the world who've contacted me to show solidarity. And I particularly want to mention Bishop Anthony Randazzo, the Catholic Bishop of Broken Bay, who has started a tradition last year that he's reinvigorated of people putting a candle in their windows to stand in solidarity with the Jewish people. Hanukkah is a festival where each night the light grows And I ask Australians all to join us together, put a candle in your window and let the light grow.
Thank you, Julian. Susan, this should never have happened. There is no world in which any Australian thought that this is the kind of country we'd be living in now, where a young child loses their life as part of an event where people went to celebrate their faith in a public reserve. No one woke up yesterday thinking these were the events we'd now be dealing with and the loss of life we've seen as a result. And of course, sadly, the fabric of our society changed forevermore. And as Susan has said, this is something that could have been avoided. We did not have to come to this. Over the last 2 years, there have been countless warning signs to our country, to our leaders, about things that need to be addressed. Reports have been compiled, recommendations provided by the Special Envoy to combat antisemitism, and those things haven't been acted upon. And we only heard this morning Gillian Segal herself say that she's been holding her breath in fear of an event like this occurring, impacting in the way that it has. And now it has. It is time for the Prime Minister and his government to step up where they haven't for the last 2 years, to provide the leadership that this community has been lacking and address the issues that have scourged our community for too long now. And I support Susan in her statement that as an opposition we will work with the government to provide whatever support necessary to put in place measures that prevent this sort of thing from ever happening again. This is Australia, a freedom-loving, tolerant, inclusive country, but what we saw happen yesterday is something that does not reflect the Australia we all know and love. And whatever needs to happen, the opposition will back in the government to make sure it doesn't happen again. It is unacceptable that it has come to this, and leadership needs to be shown now. We can't wait another day.
Susan, Benjamin Netanyahu said, Anthony Albanese, you've let the disease of anti-Semitism spread, and the result is this attack on Jews. What do you make of Benjamin Netanyahu's comments? Are they fair criticisms?
As the Leader of the Opposition in Australia, I will focus on the Australian national interest and the things that need to take place now after failures of governments in this country to tackle the scourge of anti-Semitism. I understand the frustration being expressed today by so many Jewish Australians, and I know it's really vital that we focus on the recommendations that Gillian Segal made in this report that was handed to the Prime Minister and his ministers months ago.
Should the government have responded to that report sooner?
Yes, they should. I was here in this building when the Prime Minister stood up with Gillian and talked about receiving the report. I didn't refer to any of the recommendations in there. We're still waiting. We're still waiting. And meanwhile, in the last 2 years, I have met with Jewish Australians all over this country, and I have heard some of the stories that I've told today and that we've all seen written about and that we've all read. This rising tide of anti-Semitism has happened in front of this government and have not responded. And it is incumbent on them to enact these recommendations, to give our Jewish Australian community security and safety.
Are you open to tougher gun control laws if it emerges there are vulnerabilities in the existing system?
There are families waiting by the bedsides of their loved ones across hospitals in Sydney today. And my heart breaks for all of them. And with that in mind, this is not a subject I'm going to discuss today.
The Premier says that he's considering changes to gun laws. Do you think we should have an explanation, or authority should explain why a man was able to retain his licence for 6 firearms whilst his son was known to authorities and on a admittedly low level but on a terror watch list?
It's an incredibly difficult day for those who are, as I said, waiting for news about their loved ones in hospital. And I know the investigation is ongoing. The agencies will do their work and the New South Wales Government will respond accordingly.
Josh Burns
says attacks on the Jewish community have been minimised or justified by some members of the community. Do you share his concerns?
I haven't heard those comments. I'm not going to reflect on them. Josh Burns is a Jewish Australian who cares deeply for his community, and I'm not going to respond to comments that I'm not personally aware of.
Is it your view, or do you believe that this attack specifically was the result of the Albanese government failing to tackle what you say is anti-Semitism that has been led to fester?
In terms of the next steps, again, the agencies will continue to do their work. Questions are being asked and the investigation is ongoing, and I am not going to reflect on it. But I am going to say that the government has been warned comprehensively and unequivocally about the rising tide of anti-Semitism in this country, and more importantly, what we could and should be doing about it. And action has not been taken on Gillian's recommendations, and it needs to be.
We're talking about two gunmen with 6 guns opening fire on families at Bondi Beach. What in that report would actually have made a practical difference to stop this attack from happening?
The Jewish community was targeted yesterday, and the investigation is ongoing about aspects of this murderous massacre. But one thing is very clear, is that it is a terrorism event, and it did target the Jewish community. And deeply embedded in that is anti-Semitism. And we have, as a country, I have felt so many times in the last 2 years, such frustration and anger that nothing has been done to address what I am hearing from my wonderful friends and community members in the Jewish community. And I know Julian has many stories. If you are talking to Jewish Australians who say they will return to Israel because they feel safer in Israel than they do in the eastern suburbs of Sydney, then surely that must have been a wake-up call to this Prime Minister and to this government. When, as I visited the Adass Israel synagogue after the bombing, and I spoke to the community there who said that as their 4-year-olds are walked into kindergarten that day, they give a high five to a security guard standing there with a weapon. And when I heard mums say they quickly hid all the symbols of their faith from their houses, from their children getting on the bus. And when I spoke to female university students from the Jewish community who told me the horrible things that was said to them on campuses, I'm not going to repeat them, but I have heard this for 2 years, and we should, as Australians, have done more to protect our Jewish community before this horrific and horrendous crime. I do stand ready to support the Prime Minister, but I strongly, strongly urge him to pick this report up and to act immediately to implement its recommendations.
Last question. Your call to implement the plan in full, is that something that is a consensus view across the coalition? And can you confirm whether or not shadow cabinet has been convened to reach the views that you were expressing today?
This was a commitment the coalition made when the report came down. It's a commitment the coalition maintains. Thank you all.
OK, that was the opposition leader Sussan Ley there in Sydney, and joined by Liberal colleagues Julian Leeser and Jonathan Dunyam. Sussan Ley expressed her shock and horror at what...
You've been listening to Flashwire, powered by Mencari.com, where facts still matter and stories still mean something. If you believe in independent journalism with impact, hit subscribe and share this episode. Your support keeps truth alive.
Breaking. Verified. Australian. When the story breaks, we don't wait. We verify, explain, and bring you the facts straight from the source.
Now, Optus has clearly failed here. Optus have failed to put safety first.
Company Optus and its parent company Singtel offer commercials.
Discussions based as friends
and trusting. And part of our discussions, informally as well as
the whole
formally,
world came
has
together,
been
to be honest. So many countries that you wouldn't have even thought of it, they came together. The world has come together.
Now, we do need to draw a line in the sand when it comes to the protests that we continue to see in this country.
The Flash Wire is your rapid response breaking news podcast, a stripped down, adrenaline-paced bulletin that drops minutes after major stories break. It's designed for listeners who want accuracy and speed, not noise. Think of it as the audio equivalent of a newsroom's red alert light turning on. Each episode runs under 5 minutes, short enough to drop between scrolls, but packed with verified updates, eyewitness info, expert sound bites, and a forward look at what happens next. No spin, no filler, just what you need to know and what comes next.